Hi, good morning, Lorraine. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us today.
And thank you for coming.
We're here to find out who is LorraineThomas.
LorraineThomas is who you see is what you get.
Well, let's start from the beginning. So where did you grow up?
In Ohio, in the country, more or less in the country, small town. Spent my summers with my grandmother in the country, my mother in the winters when I went to school. Because my mother and dad were divorced.
Well, what was your childhood like?
Just a typical childhood. I mean, you know, when I got old enough, I had a bicycle. I was lousy in school, and my spelling's still lousy. But, you know, it was easy. It was fun. Everybody hung out. I had fun. There wasn't any stress. I had no stress. We didn't have a lot, but we had food on the table and a roof over our heads and clothes on our backs. And you know what? That's all anybody could ask for. Because I think about the time I was born, my mother had lived through the Depression. So, and she worked from the day I was born. People are so traumatic today about some divorces and you know, the way they grow up, and it all goes back to their childhood. I survived all of it. And you know, my childhood was probably a much harder or easier. I don't know which way you'd want to look at it, because you know, we were outside all day long. We didn't have TV, we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't have all the electronic games. And that's what makes you more healthy. I'll never forget where I came from. You know, I appreciate what I have today. Yes, I've earned a lot of it, but you know, nothing's ever given. You have to earn it to appreciate it.
Did you have any aspirations or dreams when you were a child of what you wanted to
Oh
be?
yeah, I was going to be a nurse, but I have an older sister that's about a year and a half older than I am, and she decided, so she's through school first, so she decided she was going to be a nurse. Well, back then there was no money, so my mother could put one of us through, but not two. So I said, okay. And you know what? Things have a way of working out the way they do. There is a plan. I swear to God, there's a plan. But she went on to be a nurse, and you know, and she's worked her whole life, where she's had to work harder than I have.
So that changed what you wanted to do? What did you?
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I got out of high school, I moved to Fort Wayne, because my mother at that time was living in Fort Wayne, my stepfather, and I was just going to go get a job and see what happened.
You know, fast forwarding a little bit, how did you meet your husband, Dave Thomas?
At the restaurant where I got a job.
Okay.
But he was in the service when I went to work. People would talk to me about him, they were telling me about him. Okay, he's young, you're young, get together. Maybe.
Now, what was he doing at the restaurant?
He was a short order cook.
And what were you doing there?
Waitress.
Would you say it was love at first sight?
No. No, it was not love at first sight. Everybody knew everybody in the restaurant. I mean, it was like a family thing. And half of them were related to the owner of the restaurant.
In 3 words, how would you describe your relationship with Dave?
Good. I don't know. The way I see some people's marriages and some people's relationships, I'd say mine was very good. He never really had the love and attention that a family gives to a child. So he really didn't have that when he was growing up, where I had all of that, including grandparents. And, you know, he had them, but his were adopted. And his grandmother was very good. He loved her, and she was good. But his adoptive mother passed away when he was very young, and his stepfather married like 3 times. He had a lot of learning to do on how to communicate with a wife. I would give people a piece of advice. If women and men, they get married, and if they start with nothing, then the wife better grow with the husband along the way, because she'll be left in the dust. I mean, we had our ups and downs. Nothing's a bed of roses. No, we got mad. He'd get mad at me. So, big deal. Get over it. And we got over it. I had 5 children. My son's deceased now. I had 4 daughters. I have 17 grandchildren. I have 7 boys and 10 girls. And now I have 4 great-grandsons and a new granddaughter due this month.
Lorraine, do you see your children and grandchildren often?
Usually, I go north every Christmas. I go back to Ohio. I have my own place. I have a townhouse in Ohio, Columbus. And Upper Arlington's a little suburb. And we have Christmas dinner at my place. I mean, I could have anywhere from 20 to 25, 30 people if they want to bring a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, and they've all done it before. Normally I have them just about all there. Sometimes there's one missing or 2, but not very often. And then during the summer, they join me in the Bahamas on my boat. You know, they take turns, a week here, a week or 10 days, and the grandkids come more often than the parents do now. That's when I get the most information out of them, is when I got on the boat.
Right. Oh, sure.
Because at Christmas, it's too jungled. I mean, you know, there's so many people. It's like going to a party. You never really carry on a conversation with somebody because there's no time. On the boat, I have one-on-one. All of my grandchildren, 17 of them, still speak to me. And at least 2 of my 2 older little great-grandsons speak to me. I think it's quite remarkable when I have 17 of them still talking to me.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about a certain fast food restaurant called Wendy's.
Yeah, they have good Frosties.
They have great Frosties. So when and where was the first Wendy's established?
First one was downtown Columbus in 1969. Almost 60-some years.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
What was the idea, or
My husband, even when we were first married and worked for the restaurant, he wanted to be his own boss. And he wanted to have, he loved hamburgers. He really did love hamburgers. And that's the way it started. And like I told him, nobody in this world is ever their own boss. You always have the IRS looking over your shoulder. Or somebody. Right. When we could, we finally got to the point where he decided he would do it. And one of his friends, good friend, a neighbor that we had, he was a car dealer, and he had a just bought piece of property next to his dealership because he wanted to expand, but it was an old restaurant that had went out. So he told David, let's put it there, because they both wanted to eat. And that's how it started, really.
That's an incredible story.
But he didn't know about the name. Wendy was a nickname, but the kids could not pronounce Melinda when she was born. They always called her Wenda, and it ended up being Wendy. So he decided, since it was a nickname, he could use that. But then we had to figure out a logo, which I made the dress that the actual logo was made off of. I made her dress, dressed her up, and we took photos. I've got one of the originals back there of the photos.
Why Wendy, and did the other daughters?
She had the real red hair.
Okay.
It was more like a copper colored, and it was kind of long, so I could put little pigtails in it. And because that was David's style of image. He went an old-fashioned look. Pigtails and the red hair, and she had freckles, and they were, pretty prominent back then.
Wendy's, one of my favorite hamburgers, and I'm not just saying that. There's definitely something different about what Wendy's has. Why are the hamburgers square?
David decided he didn't want to cut corners. And he had learned this from an old hamburger chain years and years ago, that used to do that, have square. But he made his big enough that they'd drip over the bun just enough to know you had more. He was very creative in a lot of things.
Yeah. So, Lorraine, we all remember the slogan, "Where's the beef?" What do you love most about being part of such a creative and successful, not just the marketing campaign, but franchise?
You grow into it. We grow into it. We were in franchising before. We had Kentucky Fried Chicken. First off, we used to go to the conventions and we knew people there and everything. And then we got into our own Wendy's. And but it's the people. It's not anything to do with marketing. Yes, some of them were really good. Some of the ads and the commercials were fantastic. But it's all the different people you meet along the way. I've met movie stars. I've met politicians, presidents. I met George W., the senior, before he was ever president. What I used to enjoy is meeting all the different people because they were so varied and so many.
How involved are you today?
We are franchisees today. After my husband passed away, my son won the franchise. My son did. So I told him that, okay, I would back that. I would help them. But he had to take his sisters along. It had to be a family thing. So it became the Thomas 5. That's our company name. I added +1 on there because I was the sign-up partner. They just stuck with the Thomas 5, which is fine. But the 4 girls, well, 2 of them started out in it to start with. And because Wendy had been in the franchise business before in Texas.
You know, you mentioned Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can just talk about that a little bit, because you said KFC came before Wendy's. So.
It did. That goes back to Fort Wayne. They have to. When I moved to Fort Wayne, and after David and I were married, we both met. But once I got pregnant with my first child, I never worked anymore. I only at home. But the owner of the restaurant where David was working, you know, they had 2 or 3 different restaurants back then. He even learned the barbecue business and ran the barbecue place. But now Colonel Sanders comes along, and he meets Phil Klaus, who owned all these restaurants. They decided to put Kentucky Fried Chicken in. Phil offered David a chance. He offered him a piece of it, so he would be a part owner. And if we'd move to Columbus and take over the restaurants.
The first Wendy's in 1969, so fast forward, what brought you to permanent residence in Florida?
The Wendy's were doing good. Everything was going along very well. And it was getting colder. We were getting older. Our kids were all out of the house. Most of them, you know, some of them were married already. They didn't need us like they did before. So we talked about different places. We talked about California, actually, to start with. And I told him, I said, David, anything happens, it's going to take too long to get home. The weather's not bad in Florida. We've been to Florida before, vacations and stuff with all the kids. So I said, it's only 2.5 hours from Columbus to Fort Lauderdale. We decided we'd look down here. We bought a condo to start with. Some friends of ours, the governor of Ohio back then, and was one of them, and the 3 of us, 3 couples, bought condos in this one, Playa del Mar, was just being built, was just ready for occupancy. So we've all bought in there. After a while, they turned it over to association. See, when we moved in, it was still, run by the people that built it. But then the association takes over, and it's a whole different ball of wax. And I had 5 children. They didn't want them on the beach. They didn't want them to do this. They didn't want them to do that. Our car battery stopped one night right in front of the front door. David stopped the car to let us out before he could get inside so we could call a filling station or somebody. They were on the phone, demanding that we move the car and all this kind of crap. So he threatened them. He told them, he said, that's fine, I'll just give it to the NCAA. He was going to donate our condo to them, and there's not a thing they could have did about it. That's when we looked for a house. And we've been on this property ever since. It was like 70 I don't know, 76, 75, 78, somewhere around there. But we didn't start out as permanent residents quite yet.
The Dave Thomas Family Foundation for Adoption, that's a huge cause. It's done remarkable things for adoption, for foster care. You mentioned earlier that David was adopted. So can you talk a little bit about the start of the foundation and your involvement?
I don't know. One of the guys at work, I mean, when he would speak to groups, he was very quiet about his adoption. But after my oldest daughter, she decided she wanted to know, because she had 2 kids by then, and she just wanted to know some background. I'd met his grandfather. His grandmother had passed away. His mother had passed away. He'd got his adoption papers and went to New Jersey, found the family, and so he met his grandfather. You know, he's a very nice person. I think they were just thrilled to see David, to meet him. We did have some of his cousins or something for one time down to Columbus, so we could meet them and visit. But over the years, they're all gone. But then after we started the business and he was on TV, he had the notoriety and he had the impact and he had the background. He could do this. One of his marketing people told him that he should do this. I wanted to be involved when he first started it because I knew a little bit about foster care system. Denny Lynch, who was one of the original guys, he was marketing for David and Wendy's, and he was on the board. He run it for years.
Through research and looking at all the literature and pictures, there are a lot of pictures that put Dave Thomas in places where he's with the children, and like you said, he was really
He's a big boy. He was a big kid.
What would you say that he would say was his greatest accomplishment or what he was most proud of in his life?
His family? Mm-hmm. Probably. Yeah. But he had his dream. He made his restaurant too. So he had 2 accomplishments. He had 3 or 4. He had a lot of them.
You know, now we talk about philanthropy. So we've talked about that organization, and you are involved in a lot of organizations. So you talked about Children's Home Society. We know that...
that was probably my first one down here.
There's many others. There's the Royal Dames, you have Women in Distress, you have the Sala Foundation, Children's Hospital at Broward Health.
Children. When we first built the building, and I went in, I was walking around in there one day, and we'd had a board meeting. I said, well, what are we going to do downstairs on the walls and doors and different things? And they said, well, nothing. It's done. I said, it looks like a hospital room. No color, it was just bland. I had a decorator at that time, and I took him down there, and I said, here's what I want to do. And I'm not asking anybody. I'm paying your freight, and you're going to do it. And I had all the walls in the room painted. I had every door painted a different color and a bright color. And the kids that came in there after that, oh, I'm in the green room. I'm in the blue room. I'm in the pink room. They all associated the bright colors, and that made them happier. You know, kids don't like bland. They're used to color.
We spoke about several organizations that you're involved with. What do you love most about your work in the community?
People and my fondness for kids. I mean, you know, the kids can't help themselves. You have to help the kids. And there's a lot of kids, you know, that really have no privileges and they don't know. Junior achievement, for instance, you know, that's the best thing going. We were involved in that before they ever built this, not down here, but in Ohio. My husband got an award from Junior Achievement nationally one year. I mean, so I've known about it all my growing up. Yeah, even when I was growing up, my kids had it, I think, even in grade school, some of them. I always thought my mother was kind of an abused mother in a way. I don't know whether she was or not. So I decided, you know, there is women out there. They don't know what they're doing.
That's great because you're sharing that with others.
But most of it, if you'll see, it has to do with children. Yeah. Years and years ago, we helped start a fund for the James Cancer Hospital, which has really grown up there. It's called Nationwide Children's Hospital now. It is big. It is huge.
What does LorraineThomas do for fun?
Well, I used to play golf until I had a new shoulder and a new knee, but now I bead. I just make jewelry, bracelets, necklaces, a few pieces I keep for myself, but my kids will want them. My grandkids have all gotten bracelets over. Junior Achievement will take 1 or 2 pieces for their auction at Uncorked every year. I just give it away.
What would you say is your greatest struggle, or was your greatest struggle?
Losing David. I mean, life's not easy in any stretch of the imagination, but you just got to roll with it. And then you just maintain yourself and keep yourself moving. It's the only thing I know. Just got to keep moving. When I lost my husband, when I lost my son, that was struggling. But no, I really have I don't have any struggles. I have everything I need. Probably have more than enough than I need. I have my townhouse and my car in Columbus. I have my house and car here, and I have my boat in the backyard. What more can a person ask? And I'm probably as happy as I'll be, you know. And my kids are all fine. My grandkids are all fine. We have no major illnesses or anything that I really have to worry about right now.
What is your greatest accomplishment? It may be hard to only choose one.
My kids, because now I've got all these grandkids. Sometimes I like to send them back, but you know what? I wouldn't trade them for anything. I've lived a great life. I've had a great time along the way, and I've had a lot of fun along the way. What more can you ask? And I've had love, so what more can I ask for? Business-wise, I've never really been in business, but I know one thing, you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Well, you've definitely left behind a legacy. Your family's a huge legacy. Is there anything that you would say that your legacy, what is your legacy that you've left behind besides your wonderful family?
Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That, you know what, that's the best line you could ever tell somebody.
Yes.
I'm done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, just